Walk in peace, walk in beauty.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Mike McMahon, and I'm the Executive Director of the Hymn Society in the United States and Canada. And it's such a joy today to be with all of you and to be with our guest, Sally Ann Morris, to begin a new season of interviews. This is our fifth season out. We've done 9 interviews in each season, and we've got 9 scheduled for this one. All of the interviews this season are with fellows of the Hymn Society. So I'm really excited, really, to have the opportunity to talk with each of these people and to kind of get to know them a little better and to kind of put together the pieces of how we support one another in this work in the Hymn Society. And those who have been designated as fellows, I think, have a special place in that in our community. So thanks so much for being with us. And Sally, welcome. It's good to be with you today.
Thank you, Mike. It's always good to see you, and hello to all of my dear friends in the Hymn Society. Thanks.
Well, you're welcome. And it's looks like we have a nice turnout today too. So I just want to say to everybody that if you'd like to participate, we're not able to put you on camera, but you certainly can ask a question through the Q&A function. We do have the chat also, and you're welcome to use that. But if you have a question or something you'd like to comment about, I'd appreciate if you'd use the Q&A function. That'll make it a little easier for me to monitor that as we go through it. Now, if you don't know Sally Ann Morris, I think you're going to be delighted to get to know her a little better today. She lives and works in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where she is the musician in residence at the Wake Forest University School of Divinity. She's a life member of the Hymn Society and has composed more than 200 hymn tunes. One of the things I really admire about Sally is the way she has collaborated with so many people to create congregational song, and the spirit that she brings to congregational song that comes through so beautifully in the music that she creates. Just this summer, she served as musician at Iona Abbey in Scotland, and I'm sure that we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go through the interview today. But anyway, Sally, it's so great to be with you, and I'm wondering if we could start a little bit about you getting into all of this, church, ministry, music. I think your story probably is a little different from stories that we've heard from some other people about sort of being destined for this from the very first moment of their existence. Can you talk a little bit about how you got started?
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I come from a family that was that music was very central to our family. My father was quite the musician, largely self-taught, but then did do some professional study, and he played upright bass, and he played both in the Winston-Salem Symphony, and he also did combos and dance gigs and that sort of thing. He could play a variety of other instruments as well. So there was always music in the house. My mom's father was the piano technician and had learned the craft of piano building at Steinway and then also at Baldwin. And so my grandparents owned a piano store. So from the time I have my earliest memories is spending time in the music store. And I was expected to be a musician. So I was trained as a musician. My first instrument was the ukulele, and then I began piano lessons when I was 6, and continued that all through college, and continued music studies into graduate school. So the idea was that I would become a professional musician, and it was the last thing I wanted to do. And so when I was in graduate school, I made a declaration that I am never going to work as a musician, and especially I will never work in church. And so I was early 20s when I made that firm declaration. I will not work in church, will not work in church. And because I didn't want to tie up my weekends. And so it's like, people who work in church, they have to work weekends, and what's up with that? And so but I had been composing music since I was a young teenager, and won a contest for the best song written by the eighth grader or something like that in the school system. And I've written songs ever since that. And most of my music was choral writing, so either solo songs or writing for choir, which is my great love, is choral singing, which I learned so much of, especially in college. And so I just wanted to write choral music. Never occurred to me to try to get any of that published, but I began sharing that music back in Winston-Salem, and with the directors of a choral ensemble here in town that was called the Piedmont Chamber Singers. It's a choir that went 45 years and finally disbanded a couple of years back. But I would show them anthems, and they would feature them on the concerts, which was a great honor. And in 1990, one of the members of that group came to me and said, "We love the music you write. Our church is having its 100th anniversary." This was in Augsburg Lutheran Church, downtown church, Winston-Salem. And they said, a person in our congregation has written hymn words, and we think new words deserve a new tune. Would you write a hymn tune? And I said, I've sung hymns since I was 5 years old. I'd be happy to write a hymn tune. So I wrote my first hymn tune that year, 8787D, and I wrote that tune to sound like what I knew hymns were supposed to sound like. And so it sounds just like it was written 200 years ago. So it might have been a Regent Square wannabe. Oh, that's not 877. Anyway, but I wrote it to sound like what I thought hymns are supposed to sound like, that are in a big downtown church with the organ and I attended that service and was just deeply stunned and moved at the experience of having that congregation singing something that I had written. And all I wanted to do then was to repeat that experience. I wanted to do that again. And at the same time, why I hadn't made this connection before, I don't know, but it doesn't matter. The church that I belonged to and still do was one of the trial churches for the then new 1990 Presbyterian hymnal, the blue one. Our pastor was on that committee, and he brought in all of these for years. We were like a guinea pig, and we would try out these hymns and hymn texts and music that was all brand new. So I knew that people are writing these things, but I didn't know who they were, what other connection there was. So I went to David Partington, and I said, how do I learn about these hymns? And I want to do this. And I showed him the hymn I'd written, and I want to keep doing this. Well, that same year, this is 1990, Tom Troger and Carol Doran were the Routley lecturers at the Montreat conference in just 2 hours from where I live. And David was on that committee. And he said, I want you to come up and meet them. So I drove up, and he had arranged a private meeting with Tom and a private meeting with Carol. And I played them what I had done. And by then I had written 2 other tunes. And they said, you need to join the Hymn Society. I said, what's that? And so they each said that independently of the other. And the Hymn Society began 3 weeks later in Charleston, South Carolina. And I was able to go to that conference the first time. And when I went to that opening Sunday night, I'll never forget it. The opening hymn, Come We That Love the Lord. And in the first 4 bars, I just sat down and cried. I had never experienced anything like that in my life. And so that's where I began to meet people whose names I had been seeing now in the hymnal, and there they were in the flesh, and that's what started everything. So I kept writing hymn tunes, and then because I had these fine, beautiful people and their magnificent words and their support, and I went to the next conference, and I stayed a few extra days in St. Olaf where we workshopped how to write, and I so that one thing led to another and led to another, and I was fortunate enough to enter contests, and I won them, and it was, things just started falling into place, and then publishing began happening. And so 10 years into of that, of just of writing and working outside in the private, my late partner and I owned a business that we ran out of the basement of our house. We recycled the toner cartridges that go in laser printers.
Wow.
Can you imagine that? I mean, it was like a little factory in our basement. And taking these gadgets apart and cleaning them and refilling them with nasty powder and putting it back all together and boxing them up and delivering them to the people who wanted them recycled. And we did that for 7 years. And then I felt that I was being called to church ministry. And then in the year 2000, my vow to never work in church got broken.
Uh-huh.
And so that's how I got into.
Wow, that's quite a story. Um, I just want to go back a little bit to when you started writing. When you started writing, did you ever write words, or have you always been have you always? I don't want to say just. Have you been always focused solely on tune and music?
Well, I tell people very adamantly today that I don't write words, and for the most part, that's very, very true. I come up with ideas, and both Mel and Adam can attest to that. I'll come to them with ideas, and then I expect them to finish what I've started. But Carl tells me every time he sees me, which is about once a year, he says, "Do you remember at St. Olaf, you showed me a text that you had written, and I said to you at that time, Sally, I think you just need to stick with writing music." And and what's really fascinating about that is I don't remember that he said that to me, but perhaps it was so traumatic that I blotted it out of my memory. So, but no, it is not my gift, and I have the joy and the honor and the privilege of working with people who are such the most magnificent text writers of our time. Some of those have now passed on. My beloved Tom Troger and my beloved Herman Stempfli, and then of course we've lost Ruth. And I mean, it's just but what I get to do is to work with these people, and there's no better feeling than that.
Well, since you brought that up, I was kind of wanting to talk a little bit about the whole collaboration thing, because when I think of you as a consummate collaborator, someone who plays well with others, so to speak. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, what it's like because a lot of time you think about a composer, you think of somebody who works in a solitary kind of way, but that doesn't characterize your work, I don't think, very well.
Um, not entirely. There are some times where I'm in my little solitary tower, and I'm literally in the steeple of Waite Chapel right now. But early on, when I had words in front of me, I responded to those words, and so and over time, fairly early, tried to find my own styles and ways, rather than writing a hymn that could have been written better by someone 200 years earlier. And so, but at the same time, I also, tunes would just come through my head, and if I was lucky enough to remember them, I would jot them down. And even in a couple of instances, I'd be in the car, and at the time I had one of those little tiny little micro recorder things, and I would hum something into it, and then I'd revisit it and put it down. And in most cases, they were in kind of hymn forms. Not everyone was, but a lot of them just had those fairly classic metrical patterns. And some of those wordless tunes have actually gone on even today to be some of my more successful ones, when you consider that they've been published or become, you can find them in a hymnal and this and that and the other. And so that the words came, the tune came before the words. And I would send these wordless tunes to Tom, and then I started sending them to Herman, and then I started sending them to Mel. And so it's to the point where Mel prefers me to send her a tune that gets her juices flowing, and she'll hear a musical phrase, and then hear she'll hear the phrase of words, the verse that goes with it. I mean, that's a fascinating project. The In most cases, though, I do respond to someone's text. And then there are times where it depends on who the person is. Adam and I have a great back and forth where we'll discuss the line, and that includes not just his words, but also how the music might go. I don't have that relationship. I didn't have that relationship with everyone. You know, if Tom sent me something, I went with it. I didn't, and then if I sent it back to him, he didn't question what I'd written. But Adam and I, you know, I'm the same age as Adam's mother, and I sometimes, and I have a son who is close in age to Adam, and so I almost think of Adam as son number 2. And so we just have this, I have this very, I won't call it mother-son relationship, but we are very comfortable with it. Thanks, Mom, he just said. I have this very comfortable dialogue, and we trust each other so much. And he's also very pastoral to me, and has seen me through a lot of um, tough times in my world and my life. And so we have this relationship that goes beyond just our working relationship as collaborators and editor and artist. But I and each and I'll go back to Mel as well, because sometimes she'll say, well, can you just take off the pickup note to that and start on the downbeat? Yes, of course I can do that. And so those are the kinds of, they're just the wonderful and varied ways of working with individuals.
I really, there's so much in what you just said that I'd like to explore, but I think one of them has to do with the relationship between text and tune. I remember Mel saying when she was doing an interview that she liked to start with tune and then create text for that. And you were just saying that you do it both ways. But do you have a preference, or do you you know, kind of like working in all kinds of different ways?
Um, I don't say, I don't think I have a preference. If a tune comes, then I'll let it come and I'll write it down.
Hmm.
And that, although I hear tunes and fragments all the time, I don't write them all down. And I'm sure I've forgotten far more than I've remembered and been able to capture. It's 90% of what I've done, I haven't actually counted, but I'm sure it's over 90% are text. The text comes first. And so I almost always respond to the text. In many cases, I always get asked, how does that work? And sometimes it's instantaneous, that I can be reading a hymn poem, and by the time I get to the second or the third stanza, I am singing it. I mean, sometimes it comes that easily, and it just, I hear it, and I respond, and I'm able to put it down. Then others need more attention, and I have to work harder at them. And that doesn't mean that the finished product is any better or less than the ones that come easily. Sometimes I'll work my way into a problem. I'm sort of, I have a tendency to that the tune ends in not the same key it started. And so I have to figure out, okay, is that okay? Is that okay to do that, as long as I can get us back to where we need to go comfortably and have it make sense? Or do I need to go back and see where I went wrong? I have one tune that is that it's a Christmas text of Adams, and when it all came together, he said, what key is this in? I said, I don't know. And so we called it Clavis Mysterium. So it's, oh, mysterious key. And and the segue back from the end to the start of the next is very unusual, and yet it literally slides a half down, and it's just like it's not done, and yet it's one of I love that tune so much. So
Fascinating. There's a related question that just went into the quick Q&A from Carl Zinsmeister. Do you create melody without thinking of harmony at first, or both simultaneously, or some variation?
Carl, thanks for that question. It's almost always my tunes, when they come, I'm hearing the key, I'm hearing the chords, I'm hearing where it goes and where it changes. That's I'm also and I can certainly write tunes in my head and put them down, and I do that. When I was on Iona this summer, I didn't have a keyboard that I could attach to, I wasn't always at a keyboard, and I wrote 3 or 4 tunes while I was there. But at home, I have a digital piano that's connected to the computer, and so I'll play and experiment and try this and that. And but that's part writing is something that is, and accompaniment, because I am first a pianist, and then I taught theory in graduate school. It just comes so naturally, and all my choral singing experience I mean, I'm influenced by every piece of music I think I've ever sung in my life, whether it's from the 15th century, or just written this year, or from my beloved Stevie Wonder and Fleetwood Mac and Chicago, and I mean, it doesn't matter. If I've heard it, it shows up somewhere. So.
Well, we talked a little bit about the relationship between text and tune and writing those. I was also struck by the way you talked about your relationship with the people that you've collaborated with. And I know it sounds like these collaborations have all been a little different because people are all a little different. I'm wondering, what makes for a successful collaboration with a person?
Well, I think the fact that if
I'm sorry if I didn't
No,
mean to.
no, no, no. What makes it successful is, did we write a good did we create a good hymn together, and are we pleased with what each of us did as to put this together? It is not necessary that we become have a social relationship outside of that. I have some recent tunes that I have written that were sent to me, and several of them that I in the last few years, I've never met the people face to face or even on Zoom, but yet it doesn't alter how I go about crafting a tune for them.
Yeah.
So it's just it's I have no relationship other than entirely professional in that regard.
Okay, that's fair. I think that's really helpful because you speak very warmly about a number of your collaborators and use nice adjectives like dear and
Well, they and they are dear,
yeah.
and these are well, I mean, it all goes back to the Hymn Society, because if I got to see these people and get to know them, at minimum once a year, and then to sit with them and to learn from them and have lunch with them and be in their sessions with them and get to know them, and then that in many of those cases it broadened out into their personal lives and their
Mhm.
and so sometimes that would lead to us doing a program outside of the Hymn Society, maybe at a church or an institution where we collaborated on a hymn festival or a thing. And so you just get to develop your relationships that way. And so, but like some of these newer folks that Adam, in his role as editor at GIA, has been sending to me, I haven't had the opportunity yet to meet these folks and to get to know them in the same way that I did early on in my when I first got into the society, and have kept those relationships for so long. So,
I think Adam put his finger on something that what I was kind of getting at. And he said that one thing that has fascinated him about your collaborations is that at least initially you find a sound that is pretty unique to each writer. And I guess that kind of came through in the way you were talking about the various collaborators that you've worked with over the years.
right. I think I have a Troger sound. I think I have a Stempfli sound. I think I had a Bringle sound. But then sometimes I want to shake that up in some ways. But there came a point where I thought if I ever saw another common meter double text again, I would just scream. And then something just clicked in me that I could actually play around with that. And some of that had to do with the length of the phrases, and everything just didn't have to be 4/4 notes. That I just, and that was all about me having to just retrain my ear and my brain to think differently. And so I know that my accompaniments are very pianistic. I'm not an organist. And so I'll write something that I hope an organist can play, but most of the time I'm thinking fairly pianistically. So you'll see a lot of rhythm and stuff. And some of that also came from the first professional church musician job that I had, good job, was in a Roman Catholic church from 2000 to 2007. And
Huh.
I had had no experience whatsoever with Catholic music and liturgy. And I was one of those people. I, I can hardly believe I'm saying this, but I was one of those people who thought that drums and guitars didn't belong in church. And so I and over time, many wise people who from the society were able to turn me around on that. And then I got involved in the music that Marty was writing, and all of that just had all this energy, and it just freed me up and opened me up into doing all kinds of things that I had never really thought about doing before.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Marty, because he just put a question in the chat, and I want to. Well, I think it's probably time for us to go there. Could you say a little bit about your experience of worship and community at Iona? I think that people would love to hear more about that.
It's an experience like it's a place like no other, and those of you who have been there would know what I mean by that, because it's hard to find words. The Abbey is open 7 days a week and has worship 7 days a week. 5 of those days are twice a day, 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. The other two are the other 2 days a service is offered, but they are considered well, one does not have an evening service, and the one that does on Sunday night is quiet and is not a musical service. And so there's no permanent choir, there's no permanent staff, well, there's a resident staff, but they have their own jobs, and so there are volunteers, of which I was one for, and I was there for nearly 4 months. There is they lean heavily on singing. I mean, the congregation is the choir, and so it's the director's responsibility and joy and privilege to get them singing together in a short period of time. So starting at about 10 minutes prior to each service, I'm down there on the floor and teaching them their parts in whether it's a 3-part, 4-part, singing in Xhosa, singing in languages other than English, and they are eager to sing. I think the people who come there as pilgrims recognize that the place is special and unique in all the world, and people from literally all over the globe are there. And I think because of the huge impact that John Bell and the Wild Goose Group has done to widen the world's repertoire of music from around the world, people tend to come and are somewhat familiar with a lot of that, and so they're eager to sing these pieces. And so we value a cappella singing, but there is a piano in the Abbey that it's actually a digital piano, and it's piped through the sound system. Because an organ would never, you can't maintain an organ, and so it's constant change. I never know from week to week, sometimes day to day, who's there and who's bringing gifts, who can do this, who plays, and God always provided. If I needed a flute player, there would be someone in the congregation who could come up and play the flute that I happen to have in the music loft, and I would hand out djembes and other rhythm instruments. Stephen Warner showed up and played a beautiful healing service one night on his guitar, and so it was like, wow. And so it was it's like nothing else, that it does not resemble any service that I had ever experienced in any setting anywhere. It is an entirely different way of being. They use the purple hymnal, the CH4, but they're in the process now of creating their own songbook that will be used exclusively in the Abbey starting in the next 12 to 18 months. About that. So,
Well, we're going to be having John Bell next month for an interview, so we'll be able to talk about that a little more.
Yes, 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 yes.
I wonder if we could talk a little bit more about the Hymn Society. I mean, we've already talked about getting involved in the Hymn Society, and I wonder if you could say something about how the Hymn Society has been important to you and how you've been important to the Hymn Society too.
There is no question in my mind that if it were not for the Hymn Society, my life would have taken an I have no idea where my life would have gone, but it would not be this. And so I might have I mean, I don't know how far that spark of excitement about writing that first hymn that day in 1990, if how much energy would have continued to I would have given to that or been able to give to that if it were not for the society. But it's, when I got there that first time in Charleston, it's like I have found my people, and I didn't know that my people were, I didn't know I had people that I had to find. And so I found my people. And I think now that lately for years we've been calling our tribe. And I get it. I get it. We are our tribe, and it's if you know, you know. That's kind of the way. If you know about the Hymn Society, then you know what I'm talking about. I I'll say this again. I'll say it till my dying day. My greatest contribution to the Hymn Society was discovering Mel Bringle, and getting her involved in the society. And I've had the privilege now, because of events like writing the church's song, which I've helped lead twice now. Well, 3 times if you count the one we did in Iona back in June. Is that I find that I'm able to serve as a mentor to others now, and some of those, look at Hannah Brown has just published her lovely new collection, prolific output in the last couple of years since we first met. Just an amazing writer, and so that's the kind of thing that I feel like I can still contribute, is perhaps helping point people in the direction where I think that they might flourish, like people did for me, like Tom Troger and Carol Doran did for me, and said, you need to do this, and not it's like, you need to do and
That's pretty cool.
so, yeah, it's very cool. Without this society, I can't even, I can't even try to imagine it. It's so.
There's a question that sort of relates to this from Tracy Stuckberry. What advice do you have for folks just beginning to write hymn tunes? What keeps you inspired? Do you worry about being original?
Oh, I worry about being original all the time. There's sometimes when I say, did I write that? Or I know it sounds in the style, but did I write it? And for the most part, I think I'm safe in that regard. I don't, but my I'm constantly trying to tell people who come to me with a tune, because I know what it's like to have written hymn tunes that, like my first one, and that I continued to sort of do for a while, is write in a former style. And I was not as good at writing in that style as those people who lived in that style time, is to is to give yourself permission to think in new ways. Not if you find yourself writing in four-part chorale style, because that's largely your tradition, then why not expose yourself to other styles? It was sort of like what happened to me when I went to the Catholic Church in 2000. I was suddenly just bombarded in all this genre that I didn't even know existed. And so you've got to, how can you, if you don't know what's out there, you need to expose yourself to as many different styles as you can. And then so take a text and then write it in the style you think it's supposed to go, and then write it in a style that you'd never thought of doing before. If you did it in 4/4, then put it in 6/8. Do something, do something different with it, that same piece. And don't be just stuck on the one you just created. Turn it upside down. Do something entirely different. Put it in minor. Change the key. Change the rhythm. Change the style. Make it calypso. Do something different to it. Take your same melody if you want, and how can I turn that into something that it doesn't quite resemble where I first started, but now it's become cool. Or at least I think it's cool.
I love the advice. And it's you're sort of pushing us to take risks, and I think that sounds like great advice.
I'm a big risk taker, and
Uh,
I will say, because of that, some of my tunes don't find their ways into hymnals, and because they are, I think people like a lot of my tunes, but they say our congregation won't be able to sing this, or it's it's just whatever. I think sometimes my experimentations work in some context, but not across the board. Yeah.
yeah, that
But
makes sense.
I'm okay with that. I've had some disappointments about some of that. It's like, wow, I really love that tune, and I wish you did too. So and sometimes they say, well, we do love the tune, we just can't use it. And I had one commission one time. This is a long time ago. I wrote a tune, and they said, your tune is all these things you said it was. It's big and beautiful and all this stuff, and we hate it.
Oh,
We wanted something jazzy. And I said, oh, okay. So I wrote him something jazzy. Yeah.
oh, that's very funny. That's great. Well, we're kind of running towards the end of our time, and I know, can you believe it? I could go on for another hour, but easily. I mean, you're so easy to talk to. But I do want to ask you before we stop about the Hymn Society. One more question, and that has to do with the future of the Hymn Society and what your fondest hope might be for the Hymn Society as we look to the future.
I I've watched the Hymn Society grow from this, what I perceive to be this one thing 35 years ago, to something entirely much more forward thinking and activist and more and looking. And so all I can say right now is let's keep on keeping on doing what we're doing, particularly in terms of being progressive with our activism and our and the songs that we write that speak truth to power, and that promote the singing of such songs in the public square, as well as inside the church's walls. And so I support every effort that we have, that people behind the scenes, and these campaigns that we've been doing to raise funds and to keep to keep doing what it is we need to do, because the singing thing together is important, and it gives us all collective it binds us together in a way that we have we're not scared, and we are able to be bolder, I think, than we are by ourselves, and to step out and sing out.
I think you've given us a lot of encouragement to be bold and take risks and to get out there and sing for the gospel, right?
I hope so. Yes.
I think Andrew Donaldson sort of summarized what I would have liked to say here at the end of our time together, and that is this. He says, "We love you, Sally. So grateful for working with you, singing your music, and for all you have given to the singing community of the Hymn Society." I mean, I think that really sums it up. So thank you so much, Sally. It's a privilege to be with you today, and it's so grateful for who you are and who you are to all of us.
What a privilege to be a member of this society, and that has influenced and changed my life. And thank you for today, Mike, and all of you present. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for being with us, and I hope you'll join us again next month when we're going to talk to John Bell, and probably pick up some of the same things that we've been talking about today. So thank you so much. Take good care.